Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'm your host, Billy Mann, and this afternoon I have one of my favourite people in all of the world sitting across from me, my grandma Love. Um, I know she's been on before, but fuck it. You know, this is the joys of having to be able to do these things at times, you know, to have some amazing people on. And Laurie and myself have a wonderful friendship and relationship that's gone back a number of years, and we have had different conversations, both on and off it, off air, as it were, in her groups, etc. And today, as always, we'll see the conversation. We'll just let it flow out, and we have 35 or 40 minutes where we can have this marvelous conversation. And so I'm going to ask Laurie to introduce herself, and then we'll just go from there. But before we go any further, I want to say thank you, Grandma Love. I appreciate you taking the time to come on today, because you know how much I love you. And even before we came on, we didn't realize that with the time had run up to the deadline. I love you. Over to you, my love, and away you go from there.
And I love you, Billy. I look forward to being with you. We get into these incredibly deep conversations. And to me, I come away from them just like I've just peeled off another layer of whatever that is that just seems to fall away. My name is Laurie Holmes, and I live in South Carolina, USA, and I am a transformative clarity laser coach. So that might need a little bit of explanation later on if nobody knows what I do, but I'm not here to really talk about that right now. I'm just here to enjoy being in your company and seeing what shows up.
Yeah. And this is the best kind of conversation. This is the best kind of conversation. I think all our conversations tend to arrive into, I suppose, the same one four-letter word: love, Laurie.
Oh, always.
Always. And it's such a gift
to
recognize this. It's such a gift to you know. And I'm teeing this up for you now, because it was what we were speaking about just before you came on, about when you were saying that part of the passion of your life is turning people in on themselves, to see themselves, to know their own greatness, to know their own love.
Oh, absolutely. I think when I discovered it in me a few years back, it was like really became very clear where love came from. I mean, I knew it on an intellectual level, but when I could actually feel it and know it and embody it, everything just flipped. And it's the thing that fell away from me, Billy, was expectations. It's like when we expect from other people to get something from them, things don't usually go very well.
Oh, they tend not to. Yeah.
And so as I started to really open up myself, my own heart, to the understanding that we all come from love, not get love.
Yeah.
We can be loving beings, but we can't really get love from someone else as much as it looks that way. We can feel love. We can express love. We can feel that joy, that connection, especially when two bodies come together. How beautiful is that?
Yes.
We have the experience of being able to touch and hold and kiss and love. I mean, that's an extraordinary feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, and the purer it is, the less cluttered it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny you bring down the physical expression of love, you know, because at the end of the day, great sex is about no thinking. Great connection is about no thinking. It just is about no thinking.
Yeah.
That, you know, am I doing this right? Yakety. It's got none of that.
No.
and to connect with another human being emotionally, physically, and I will say this word, unconditionally.
And spiritually, unconditionally. Yeah,
Spiritually and unconditionally.
absolutely.
And to me, when you say that you started to drop your expectations, that you really began to see it, my version of that would have been the recognition of what it means to be unconditional.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say unconditional and impersonal too. There's an impersonal quality to it, like that universal understanding of love, as opposed to very personal expectation of love or conditional experience of love, where people get a lot of uncomfortable feelings, especially when they're in relationship with somebody else and it's not going well. And I have a lot of those conversations because I also do relationship coaching. And I've had many conversations with people about not understanding why they're feeling the way they are when this person does a certain thing and they feel the way they feel. And it looks a lot like that person's causing those feelings. And the deeper we go in the understanding of where feelings come from, then we start to see, oh, if that were possible, then that would happen every single time that he did this. And it doesn't happen that way because feelings are coming from within us. That's where all feeling is. Feeling is a response to the thoughts that we're having in this moment. And it's so easy and simple, and yet can be turned into something so confusing and difficult when people don't understand where their feelings are coming from.
It can't be that goddamn simple. It must be far more goddamn confusing. It must be more difficult.
Yeah.
And like one of the great phrases, it's simpler than that.
It is.
It's
The
simpler than that.
simplicity just drives people bananas, though. I've been doing some laser coaching, and I'll share the laser coaching part because it fits in. So if people understood that there was two things happening all the time, right?
Mhm.
One, knowing who you are, and two, knowing where your feelings come from. I'm being very simplistic in those two things, but if people forget who they are, then they don't know that they're a spiritual being having a human experience. They don't know that they're the essence of God in human form. We are all the energy of the universe inside of us. So we are all of it. We're the consciousness of the universe living in a human form. So that's one side of it. And people that are very intellectual, they kind of brush that part aside. They don't quite see that part. But the other part, people can talk about thoughts and feelings all they like, but they still don't see the relationship between thought and feeling as one thing happening all the time. You can't divorce each other from it. You can't have a thought without a feeling and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always an internal game. It's not external. But when I work with people in laser coaching, I don't care how long somebody's been around the principles. This is the one area where they are blind. And you know what they're blind to?
Go on.
When they were a child, they didn't know how it worked.
And they didn't care.
They didn't know. And so they innocently believed something about themselves to be true that they are still acting out today. And they have no idea that what they didn't see was that their feelings could never tell them about what the mom or dad did or said, or the sibling that came along and made you feel jealous and took away all your attention, or the neighbor that came and did something horrible that you didn't like, any of that stuff, that you made it mean something about you. And the making it mean something about you is something you've held as a truth.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put a sensation and a feeling and a truth together, it's like cement and glue.
Yeah, it solidifies. It gets stuck.
Yes. And so they walk around with it and they have no idea that this is the thing that's gotten in their way. No
Yeah,
idea. Because it's an innocent misunderstanding. And until they embody that knowledge, if it stays up in their thinking, they'll never get past it, no matter what they think they know.
that's very important. No matter what they think they know.
Exactly. Because it's not about the knowledge up here, it's about the knowing,
Yeah, the
about the
essence.
embodiment of it,
Yes.
the essence of it. Yeah. And
That's
I've,
so powerful, Laurie. You know, it's in that.
mm-hmm.
You know, I know when I'm and even a while ago when we were talking, I always use this on Zoom as a way of when I'm talking to people. It's almost like my metaphor when I start talking to clients, you know, and this starts to happen, and I can feel it going down. You know, and I was saying to you, nothing gives me greater pleasure than to have somebody kind of going blah, 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 blah. Silence.
Well, in this
Because
case, people laugh.
no, because that's it. The answer is, if the answer was there, we'd all have it. We'd have all had it. But it's not. It's about the embodiment of it, isn't it? It's the knowing of it. It's the knowing that what we thought was a truth, a belief. You know, my way of describing it is like the earned coding that we learn to believe, like you say, exactly. And I would look at it exactly the same way in that time of great learning and absorption of childhood to function within the world that we live in. We do pick up contaminated coding. We do pick up contaminated beliefs that make sense at that time, that may help us at some stage to make sense of a moment when we were younger. But like then I align that then with that really strong feeling. And suddenly 30 years later, you're trying to live your life and you're wondering why you can't do something because you're still operating that simple misunderstanding that you didn't realize it's actually okay to jettison that. It's okay to let it go.
And you know what the and here's the interesting thing that it's like if I was a scientist and all the conversations that I've had and every single one of them went back to the same root issue, what do you think it is?
Simple misunderstanding of experience.
Well, that's true, but that's not the belief.
Oh, you're talking about a belief.
I'm talking about what they believe to be true about them. What do you think that the core belief for most people was?
I suspect it's something to do with not being good enough, Laurie.
Not being good enough, and under that is love.
Yeah.
It always comes back to love.
Every single conversation.
Yeah, it always does. Because if you don't see yourself as a lovable human being, then everything you're going to do is going to come from that premise. Everything. Because we didn't see that we already were.
Yeah.
We're chasing something that's not out there.
Yeah.
And we're looking for validation out there instead of looking inside.
Yeah.
And realize, oh, I've got it with me all along.
Yeah. I have recently started to refer to that, Laurie, as the becoming.
Yes.
And my conversations with people, whether it's coaches or we'll say our non-coaching clients, tends to be, you know, part of that myth that grew up around, and it's become part of this really strong apparent thread in my coaching as well, that part of that misunderstanding is that to create something new, to create, you know, something new or create a new person or become that new you or whatever this this dynamic is. And the more, the deeper I got into this, well, actually the opposite is true. The complete opposite is true. It's about becoming more of you.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
swapping you out for somebody else, not, it's just about peeling back the layers. It's about just becoming more of you. And the more that opens up.
I had a lady recently who thought that it was about losing her identity. And I said, no, you're never going to stop being you. It's not about you're losing anything. You're dropping the stuff that no longer serves you or is no longer the truth. But that doesn't have anything to do with you. And you just start to see the flowering of who they already are come through the nonsense that they've been living in because they thought that's who they were. And that's what I get such a kick out of, as to watch the nonsense start to fall away. It's like, oh yeah, you don't have to go around with that anymore. That's not serving you. It's not who you are. So why do you carry that with you anymore if you know it's not who you are? It's become comfortable, sure, and it's become your identity, sure, but it's not you. So what's the point? That you're going to just put on those clothes sometimes and pretend to be that, whatever that is, or just, it's no longer necessary. It's, the analogy that I like to use on this is kind of the emperor's new clothes.
Yeah.
Going naked and everybody's going along with him going, oh, wow, those are beautiful clothes you're wearing. And he's, stark naked.
Mr. President.
You don't have any clothes on.
I know. And we all fall into that, that's I suppose the marvel of it is that we all succumb to exactly the same thing until we kind of go, wait a minute. Maybe he is wearing no clothes. I just love that moment. And I love that moment for myself. Sorry, Laurie.
No, I was talking when you were talking. I was just saying we're all buying into the same lie.
Exactly. We're all buying into the same lie. And that's, people really, the answer is so simple.
I know.
But the irony of the simplicity of the answer is what it does is that it allows us to experience the complexities of life.
No, of course.
In a very simple way.
Yeah.
And because life can be complex with relationships and the fullness of the living of the experience, the illusion is that I need a complex solution.
Right.
And as you're seeing, even as I'm listening, even as it clears up inside my head, like the simpler that we do make it, the more profound it becomes.
Yeah.
And the more access to that, that spiritual understanding. And I will, as anybody is listening to this, preface this by saying we are not talking about a religious thing here in any shape or form. We are talking about the human spirit, just to who we all are when we get a chance to see past our own thinking, the magnificence of the human spirit. And that's what the spiritual thing is. And that is expressed in joy, and it's expressed in happiness, and it's expressed in love, and it's expressed in excitement and tension and sex and all the good stuff as well. Because it's the human spirit coming to life. And people, in my experience, and I've been guilty of it for a number of years because I was brought up in a Catholic family, brought up in a religious family, and my mother was a firm believer in the family who prays together stays together, and that was very much part of my life for many, many years now. Into Christian Brother School, and you know what I mean. So it's for a long time.
Of that, but yes, I get it.
You with me? So it is very easy when the indoctrination into spirituality by numbers, for the want of a better description. You color in the dots or you color in the spaces and you'll become more religious and colorful or whatever. No. That's the opposite of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
When I began to really understand the essence of spirituality, I began to realize it's about the feeling.
Absolutely about the feeling. And I want to preface for anybody listening that hasn't listened to Billy or me before, when he says the feeling, he's talking about the joy, the love, the full expression of you, not the feeling that you get when, your boss is about to take you to, call on you and you're about to lose your job or anything like that. It's not that kind of feeling. It's the feeling of when everything is freed up inside of you and no longer listening to the contaminated thinking in your mind, and you've dropped into this beautiful space within you that's who you are. That feeling is just undescribable. And that's this feeling I have whenever I get with Billy.
I know, me too, Laurie. But it's always been like that with us.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember a time, even from the very first conversation that we ever had, there is something very kindred in our connection.
Mm.
There's something very kindred in our connection. I'm very grateful for it, Laurie.
Yeah.
And the conversation.
My cheeks are smiling, like this. And the only time I remember this feeling was like when I was getting married and I was on a line with about, like 100 people, and I'm like trying to keep my cheeks from falling because I was smiling so hard. But it was different. The feeling I have now is natural.
Yeah.
That feeling was like a staged feeling.
That's very
like,
different, isn't it?
I have to be happy.
Yeah.
That this is just a natural effervescence of happiness. But you feel the difference than when you're acting something and you're truly experiencing it.
Two sides. One of one of my clients, one of the coaches, we spoke about honesty, was part of this conversation. That I have found that one of the earlier steps was honesty. Was honesty. That it was actually okay not to be right with the situation. It was okay to accept that somehow this wasn't, but like you were saying, the staged smile. I'm supposed to be grinning from ear to ear, Act 2, scene 3, Laurie smiling in the queue, rather than,
Yeah.
And there's such a marvelous difference in that. Because the moment that, for me personally, when I began to recognize that level of honesty, actually honesty itself ceased to be an issue.
That's true. Yeah.
Because I didn't need to. I didn't need to tell myself I needed to do this, or, have this stern talk myself, be honest with yourself now here or whatever, because it stopped being an issue.
Yep. When I hear a lot of people that are new to this understanding, they want to know how. How?
What do I do? Roll up the sleeves and get stuck in.
How do I get there? How?
Yeah.
There's no how. And that's when you're talking about a spiritual conversation from the intellect, you will never get there because it's not a how. It's a dropping away. It's the best way I know how to describe it. It's no longer being in the midst of the contaminated thinking that's creating the misunderstanding in the first place. And so you just naturally, like you're talking about before, it's natural
I think, Laurie, I have lost you. Hello, Laurie.
That's just happens when you drop out of that misunderstanding of how things are, when you don't see it clearly, then it looks like something you need to do.
Yeah. What is it, Laurie?
Getting into the feeling, of course.
Just, in our world, when we talk about not seeing it clearly, it's obvious to us now, but for those that are listening, that's why I'm asking you that, because my interpretation when we say things are dropping away or you're beginning to see clearly is another way of saying that you're no longer preoccupied by your own thinking.
Yes, and you're becoming more present.
Yes.
Into this moment.
Hmm.
Because people say, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, I can't answer that. It's not an answerable question, because I don't think anymore about how do I get into the present moment. It's just like,
Yeah. It's your Tibetan chant ball in the head.
It doesn't take any effort.
No.
That's a good word for it. There's no efforting in it. And that's really useful when you're going to be on the radio. In a minute you're in your monkey mind, and the next minute you're present.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm in my monkey mind. That's what I have. I kind of go, oh, look at that. And and when you're actually, I suppose, to extrapolate it out a little bit further, and you're actually okay with that.
Yeah.
The point that there's the recognition that something is playing out, and it's yeti, or like you said, the monkey mind racing around. But that's just sometimes what your head does when it's got some thinking going on.
I think the thing that's fascinating that I've been noticing recently is how much I don't care about it. I don't wrestle with, oh, I'm up in my monkey mind now. Oh, well. It's like there's less and less and less. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me like it used to. Like I'd wrangle with it more. I don't wrangle with it. I just let it be. If that's where I'm at, fine. I just know eventually it's going to settle.
All by itself.
Yeah.
All by itself. I love that, Laurie. That is, and I with myself and Jen and Chip were talking about this, and we were just again one of those things. The how do you do it? There is no how do you do it. It's the recognition of presence in the moment. That's it. Yeah. And there is no feeling that if you can feel it, you've been designed to feel it. That's just the way it is sometimes. And sometimes they're not great feelings. They're just the way it is. But that's not the feeling we're talking about. Mm-hmm. That's not the feeling that we're talking about. And I suppose one of my big shifts is like when someone used to say to me, well, it's about getting into the moment. And I go, why? Is there somebody hiding another moment from me that has been a massive fucking conspiracy? And somebody said to me, yeah, let's keep the really good moment away from Billy Mann and don't tell him, but everybody else is his fucking great moment. All right? And I went, what? And then somebody said to me, it's about getting into the moment. And I was going, but there is no other moment.
That's true.
There is no other moment.
That's the joke, though. That's really.
It is really funny. It is really, really funny. And I kind of went, shit. So regardless of what's happening, this is the moment. So now it's just about the recognition of this.
However you use it, this is the moment.
Yeah, you can slice it any way you want. This is it, whether you like it or not. And the difference then for me was, oh, so there's nowhere to get to. There's nothing to do. This is exactly as it's unfolding right now. That's it.
That's it.
That's simple.
You can spend your time up in your monkey mind and all that drama.
I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be at the other good moment, over there somewhere. Bastards.
Or, yeah, I think that's the irony of it, right? Because when people are upset about where they're at, then they get more of that. So they're not really seeing what's going on right now in this moment because they're all worried about how to get to the moment that they're already
I know, yeah. Don't go, it's like my own mentor. We were discussing this
hard to
morning.
laugh at anybody that might be going through
No,
that.
but that's the cosmic humor of it. That's the cosmic humor of it. And he was saying, yeah, and his version of that was, when we think we're supposed to go to the light,
Yeah.
sometimes that light is the illusion. And he said, yeah, technically speaking, that is the oncoming train. He says, because
The oncoming train.
the light at the end of the tunnel, isn't the way out. It's the oncoming train, because you're looking to be somewhere else or something, and it's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
But he said the truth is actually it's way simpler than that.
Oh yeah.
That you don't. There is no other light over there. That what's unfolding right now is just perfect as it is. And the recognition of that perfection in this moment without you having to do anything about it, it's working away beautifully all by itself.
That's right.
And then you can see, for me, the presence of just presence is enough to recognize. And again, just expanding out the meaning of presence is having the presence, recognizing the monkey running around inside in your head is the only thing that's stopping you from actually experiencing the fullness of whatever's going on. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. It's actually that simple.
I had an insight the other day of the watcher watching the watcher watching.
You got to stop growing that stuff inside in your heart, Press. Okay. I don't care if it's medicinal or not. Who's watching the watcher? Who's watching the watcher? Yeah. Yeah. That is true. I would. My version of that would be that, and it's shown up in all of these, Laurie, in all of these conversations, really been very clear to me that you, me, and every single human being, not just those of us that are having these conversations and putting this out into the world for others to hear the possibility. That what we are, every single human being is a unique expression of the same thing.
Absolutely.
And that we are who we are, who we believe we are, the personality, the Lauries, the Billies, the Marys, the Jacks, the Johns, are the refraction of the prism of thought. We are if I have to say it, we're the one light hitting that prism in a particular way that creates Laurie, that creates Billy, the multitude of colors. And it became so abundantly clear when I started to have all these conversations, Laurie, that we're having exactly the same conversation all the time, except with different metaphors, with different ways of describing it, because Laurie has a unique understanding of it, and Billy has a unique understanding of it, and Dominic Scafidi is a unique understanding of it, and Amir Karkauti is a unique, and Ankush, and Jamie Smart, and Jan and Chip, and Keith Blevins, and Dickon. Every single, regardless of whether your first generation teacher would say it or out into us, that does not change.
No.
Regardless of how benign it looks or how profoundly spiritual these people are.
And
still
what
the same thing
boils down to always is love.
The absoluteness of it.
Yeah.
That would be my...
All one being expressing itself through the prism of love.
Lovely.
Mhm.
Is that lovely? What a lovely way to live.
Mm.
You know, what a lovely way to live.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything is possible.
Yes.
Everything is possible and abundant and already waiting. It's unhurried, it's unpressured, it's kind, it's gentle.
Mm.
And I was asked today what I meant, what love. They said how does it manifest itself or whatever. I said whatever way it manifests in this world, to me there's an element of gentility, the ease of it. It's very gentle. It doesn't matter the turmoil. It's very gentle. It's holding all the time.
Ever see a seed coming up through the ground and opening itself? That's how I see love.
Same thing, different words. The metaphor.
Yeah.
Laurie, I'm aware that you're under pressure for time, and I really appreciate that. And I will leave that seed of love with you as the final word of this. I want you just to hold on for 1 sec. I can't believe that's 40 minutes, Laurie. Actually, I can't believe that's a full hour we have been talking.
Mm. Mm. It slips away so quickly.
It does, you know. For those of you that have been listening to myself and Laurie today, this is the other side, perhaps, of sometimes that you don't hear me speak about, maybe that I should maybe start speaking about maybe a bit more. But the love that underpins everything is the truth that is in existence, that it permeates the whole universe. And when myself and Laurie get together, we said at the start of this, we invariably wind up at love, and we always do. I hope this has been good for you. I hope this has been kind and gentle for you and loving for you as much as it has been my experience to spend time with my grandma love on the other side here. Because there is nothing finer on the human level but to experience this. To experience this feeling, to experience this connection with another human being. And maybe it's a precursor for you, maybe it's a pointer for you to maybe look in the direction of that with people in your own life. To look beyond what you think about them to the experience of loving them. You just might be very surprised how easy your relationships can become based on that. So until tomorrow, I have the wonderful Nikki Bartley on tomorrow. I know, I'm looking forward to meeting Nikki again. To everybody, thank you all so much for joining us. Grandma love, I love you. Thank you so much for joining us, and I shall see you all tomorrow. Bye for now.
Love you too.